Jerusalem. The Battle for Jerusalem, 1947-1948, was one of the most consequential and symbolically charged episodes of the 1947 to 1949 Palestine War. More than a conventional military engagement, it was a prolonged struggle combining siege warfare, urban combat, psychological pressure, and international policy failure. The battle didn't end with a decisive victory for either side. Instead, it fractured Jerusalem into rival sovereignties and laid the foundation for one of the most enduring conflicts of the modern era. To understand why Jerusalem remains the emotional and strategic core of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, one must return to the months in which the city was starved, fought over, and ultimately divided. Jerusalem's importance in 1947-1948 was unmatched. Religiously sacred to Jews, Muslims, and Christians alike, the city also had enormous nationalist value for both Jews and Palestinian Arabs. For the Jewish Yishuv, Jerusalem was not only a spiritual center, but a symbol for historical continuity and political legitimacy. For Palestinians, Arabs, it was the cultural and religious heart of Arab Palestine, home to Islam's third holiest site and a central node of Arabs' urban life. Strategically, however, Jerusalem was deeply vulnerable. Situated inland in the Judean hills, it was dependent on a single narrow supply corridor from the coastal plain. Whoever controlled the corridor could decide the city's fate without even conquering it street by street. The international context further complicated Jerusalem's position. Under the United Nations Partition Plan of November 1947, Jerusalem was designated as a corpus separatum, an internationally administered city separate from both the proposed Jewish and Arab states. In theory, this arrangement was meant to diffuse conflict over the city's sacred status. In practice, it collapsed almost immediately. The United Nations had neither the will nor the capacity to enforce international control on the ground. As British authority disintegrated, however, the final months of the mandate, armed Jewish and Arab militias filled the vacuum. Jerusalem became one of the first and fiercest arenas of the ensuing civil war. By December 1947, violence in Jerusalem had escalated into systematic attacks on transport, markets, and neighborhoods. Arab militias targeted Jewish commercial centers and buses, while Jewish underground groups responded with bombings and reprisals. Yet the decisive phase of the battle didn't begin with explosions in the city itself, but with a strategic move outside it, the blockade of the road linking Jerusalem to Tel Aviv. Palestinian Arab forces operating from villages overlooking the narrow Bab-e-Wad and Latrine corridor recognized that starvation could succeed where frontal assaults might fail. By early 1948, Jewish convoys were being ambushed with increasing frequency and sophistication, and the flood of food, fuel, and medical supplies into Jewish Jerusalem dwindled into a trickle. The effects of the siege was immediate and severe. By March 1948, Jewish Jerusalem, home to roughly 100,000 people, was on the brink of humanitarian collapse. Food stocks fell dangerously low, bread and water were rationed, malnutrition spread among new civilians. The city population resorted to foraging wild plants such as mallow leaves to supplement their diets. Hospitals faced shortages of medicine, electricity, and clean water. The siege transformed daily life into a struggle for physical survival, turning civilians into hostages of geography and strategy. Jerusalem was not being bombarded into submission, it was being strangled. In response, Jewish leadership abandoned a purely defensive posture, initiated a strategic shift towards offensive action. This change culminated in Operation Nachshon, launched in early April 1948. The operation aimed to seize and clear Arab-held villages along the Jerusalem corridor. Allowing large convoys to break through the blockade for the first time, the Jewish forces committed substantial manpower and resources to a coordinated campaign outside the city. Armed convoys, sometimes stretching for miles, fought their way through ambushes and roadblocks, sustaining heavy losses but delivering vital supplies. Nashon didn't permanently secure the road, but it prevented the immediate collapse of the Jewish Jerusalem and bought crucial time: the death of Abd al-Qadir al-Husseini, the Palestinian Arab commander in Jerusalem sector, further weakened Arab coordination around the city. His death in April 1948 dealt with a serious blow to Arab morale and disrupted local command structures. Nevertheless, the strategic situation remained precarious as the British mandate formally ended and the State of Israel declared independence on May 14, 1948. The conflict entered a new phase. What had been a civil war between communities now expanded into an interstate war involving neighboring Arab countries. It was at this point that Transjordan intervened decisively. The Arab Legion, commanded by British officers and widely regarded as the most professional Arab military forces, moved into Jerusalem. Unlike irregular militias, the Legion possessed discipline, training, and artillery support. Its intervention fundamentally altered the balance of power within the city. While Israeli forces consolidated control over West Jerusalem, the Arab Legion focused on East Jerusalem and the Old City. After intense fighting, the Legion captured the Jewish quarter of the Old City in the late 1948. In the late May 1948, Jewish residents were expelled, synagogues were destroyed or damaged, surviving defenders were taken prisoners. This moment marked one of the most emotionally charged episodes of the war. For Jews, the loss of the Old City, home to centuries-old communities and sacred sites, was a traumatic defeat. For Arabs, it was a symbolic and strategically significant victory. Yet the capture of the Old City didn't end the struggle for Jerusalem. The Arab legion's control of Latrim continued to block the main road to the city, threatening West Jerusalem and renewed isolation. Repeated Israeli assaults on Latran failed, resulting in heavy casualties. Unable to dislodge the legion from this key point, Israeli forces adopted an improvised solution that would become legendary. Pardon. The construction of the Burma Road. The clandestine supply route was curved through rugged terrain south of the main highway, allowing supplies to reach Jerusalem by night. Initially impassable to vehicles, it relied on mules and human porters before being widened for trucks. The Burma Road wasn't merely an engineering feat, it was a strategic lifeline that ensured the survival of West Jerusalem despite military setbacks. The United Nations attempted to reassert control through ceasefire and mediation, but its influence remained limited. The idea of pardon, internationalization Jerusalem faced as realities on the ground hardened into de facto borders. Israel rejected internationalization as impractical and dangerous, while Arab leaders who had opposed the concept from the outset saw little reason to revive it. By the time the first truce took effect in June 1948, the fate of Jerusalem had largely been decided by force rather than diplomacy. When fighting subsided later that summer, Jerusalem emerged divided. Israel controlled West Jerusalem while Jordan controlled East and the Old City. Barbed wires, minefields, and fortified positions cut through neighborhoods, streets, even cemeteries. Families were separated, holy sites were rendered inaccessible to parts of the population. The city became a symbol of unresolved conflict. The division would last until 1967, but even reunification would not resolve the deeper political and religious disputes rooted in the events of 1948. The battle for Jerusalem thus ended not with victory but with fragmentation. It demonstrated how strategic geography, civilian vulnerability, and international indecision could shape the outcome of war. As decisive as battle tactics, the siege revealed the power of starvation as a weapon. The convoys at Burma Road illustrated the role of improvisation and endurance. The city division underscored the failure of international mechanisms to manage competing nationalisms. In historical perspective, the battle for Jerusalem was not merely a chapter in the 1948 war. It was the moral and symbolic core. The city's suffering embodied the broader tragedy of the conflict: civilians trapped between armies, scattered spaces transformed into military objectives, political compromises overtaken by violence. Every subsequent crisis over Jerusalem draws meaning from these months of siege and struggle. The battle didn't resolve Jerusalem's status, it froze it into a condition of permanent contention. Jerusalem survived, but it emerged wounded, divided, and burdened with a legacy that continues to shape the Middle East even to this day.